So, welcome to yet another English language A-level video with me, Paul Heselton. And this is a second video that's about phonology. So, if you survived the first video where we were talking about IPA, then you're ready for the next one. And so what I want to talk to you about is sound iconicity. So this is the idea that writers or speakers may be using words where there is a match between the sound of the word and the meaning. So remember all of that analysis that you used to do at GCSE literature? Don't forget those words. Those terms can come in useful again because you can use them not only when you're analysing literary texts, but when you're looking at other kind of texts as well. So, for example, fancy pieces of journalism or pieces of advertising might well use some of these kind of figurative devices. Okay, look at the types of alliteration that we've got noted here. So you have consonants, which is clearly the pattern of repeated consonant sounds for effects. Okay, so round the rugged rocks, the ragged rascal ran is consonants. Peter, picked a pick of, I don't even know how it goes. All those tongue twisters. So consonants is the repetition of consonant phonemes. The opposite of that is assonance. So this is repeated vowel sounds for effect, as in the cat sat on the hat. Or was it a mat? I'm not quite sure. But that's assonance. And then you've got sibilants. I don't know why, but S manages to get its own very special word. So sibilants is repeated fricative sounds, especially S, but also including sh and sh as well. So that's called sibilants. So those are three types of alliteration. Then underneath that, you've also got different types of onomatopoeia. Now, onomatopoeia is a sound word, and you have two types. You have lexical onomatopoeia and non-lexical onomatopoeia. So lexical onomatopoeia are those words that have some associated meaning between their sound and what they represent. So wash, for example, obviously has that onomatopoeic quality to it because it sounds like water gushing. Or cuckoo is the name of the bird because, of course, the creature makes that particular noise. So they're two examples of lexical onomatopoeia, whereas non-lexical onomatopoeia are non-words that nevertheless signify meaning. Ooh, like that. There's a piece of non-lexical onomatopoeia. So we can put all of these things here labelled under this notion of sound iconicity, i.e. there is some kind of connection between meaning and sound. And maybe there's a good argument to say that all words at root have elements of sound iconicity, that when the first words were ever said in whatever language by human beings, that they were matching the meaning of the word to the sound of the word. Okay, now, so obviously having gone through English literature GCSE and sort of analysed poetry in your anthologies, you're well used to drawing attention to the sound effects that are going on in literary texts. So here's an example of that. This is an excerpt from a piece of poetry done by a World War I poet called Siegfried Sassoon. He's a contemporary of Wilfred Owen. No doubt you've read some of his poetry for GCSE. And here are two lines which are from a description about trench life. Stepping along barred trench boards, often splashing wretchedly where the sludge was ankle deep. Now, reading that aloud, you can feel, being there in the First World War in a trench. Stepping along barred trench boards, often splashing wretchedly where the sludge was ankle deep. Okay, so what I would encourage you to do is to pause the video there, and which of those words that we had on the previous slide to do with sound iconicity can we actually apply to those two lines? Right, let's do an analysis of it then. So first of all, we have the consonant plosive phonemes here. So because we've got p and b in the first line there, as in the stepping, and then the barred and the board. So you could argue that this is kind of mirroring the thudding of the soldiers' boots on the trench board. So there's a good example of consonants. Listen to the vowel sounds that are going on in these two lines. We have a combination of sometimes short vowels and sometimes long vowels. So stepping, and then, so that's a short vowel, barred, long vowel, and then short vowel again, trench. So you've got this combination of short and long vowels, and that again possibly mirrors the boots, like the marching boots, followed maybe by the kind of frantic movement, wretchedly, for example. So hone in on some of the vowel sounds. And then, of course, you've got all of the sibilants. You've got the sh and the zh, right? So the sibilants of the fricative and affricate phonemes could be representing the mud and water in the trench environment. Okay, so there's a really good example of applying English language AO1 terms to a little bit of literary text. And that could be useful for you if you're doing some kind of analysis, perhaps for your language investigation coursework, perhaps in the meanings and representations exam, where you're getting a headline that is using some kind of sound effects in an interesting way. Okay, and let's go now to the master of using sound iconicity. I speak of Lewis Carroll, who lived for a short time very near to us in Darlington, because his father was the vicar at Croft, which is about 3 miles up the road. So he lived in Croft. So what I'm going to do is read to you a part of Lewis Carroll's poem. And what I want you to do is to hone in on the sounds of the language that Lewis Carroll is using and how that links to meanings and representations. Okay, here we go. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jub bird, and shun the frumious bandersnatch. So I've just given you the first two stanzas there. And if you've got your booklet, then you've got the entire poem. We do have, Benedict Cumberbatch reading it here with some visuals, doing a much better job, I have to say, than I've just done there. The question is, how does Lewis Carroll use phonology in this poem to create meanings and representations? Okay, so let me just focus on the first line, talk about that, and then what I would say to you is stop the video and you try and deconstruct some of the other elements. 'Twas brillig. So we have two short vowels in there, and it sounds like brilliant, doesn't it? Brillig. So it's quite a bright, kind of happy sounding adjective that's being used here. And notice I'm calling it an adjective as a word class. You're not going to find it in a dictionary, but I can tell just syntactically from where it's being placed in the sentence that Lewis Carroll is using this as an adjective. So brilliant, it's something like brilliant, and the short vowels give that sense of something sparkling. And the slithy toves, where we do have a word slimy as a pre-modifying adjective. So slithy here gives the sense of something that's sliming and crawling around. So it's giving us a pretty pejorative, that means a kind of like negative view. It sounds a bit creepy, and that's achieved through the use of the sibilants at the beginning and also slithy. It's that fricative sound there. It's the dental or interdental fricative sound that makes it seem creepy. And similarly with toves as well, we've got a long diphthong sound in there, so it sounds a little bit like toads. So it's setting us up with some neologisms. A neologism is a newly created word. These neologisms are giving us the impression that somehow we are surrounded by these underworld, perhaps underwater creatures. Okay, so pause the video there. What can you say about some of the other words in these two stanzas? Okay, now having done that, I would recommend that you do the following, that you do a piece of writing, As I said, if you've got the booklet, you've got the whole poem on page 80 to 81. So you're answering this question: how does Lewis Carroll use phonology in this poem to create meanings and representations? We always keep banging on about that because that's the question that you're always going to get in your English language A-level paper 1 section A exam. Okay, meanings and representations. Meaning that you're not just going to spot some sound features, but you always have to link what you're saying about the sound feature to an effect. So here's an example. Much of the lexis in Jabberwocky is invented neologisms, where Carroll uses sound iconicity to represent characters, objects, and ideas. Notice I'm using the word represent there because representation is in the question. And notice that I'm using these A-level English language terms like neologism and sound iconicity. At the start of the poem, the consonantal material verbs Gaia and gimble create the unsettling impression of the constant movement of the toves, giving a sense of the endless energy of these toad-like creatures. Okay, so you've identified particular sounds that are going on, and then you've talked about the effect on the reader. The pre-modifying adjective slithy, with its thick fricative sounds, has similar phonemes to the pejorative word, pejorative here meaning negative, the pejorative word slimy, adding to the semantic field of underworld life. There you are. I've set you up with the first paragraph. So your job, therefore, is to write about some of the sounds in the rest of the poem. Off you go. Okay, now I'm going to move on in this video to the next thing, which is about phonological manipulation. So this is the thing that we have a lot of fun with sound, don't we? And often they are the root of jokes. Jokes and puns revolve around phonological manipulation. And quite often we do this thing of making jokes with minimal pairs. So two words that differ in only one single sound is quite often the root of puns. Let me give you an example. I keep rereading The Lord of the Rings over and over. I guess it's just force of hobbit. Pretty terrible joke. Now, so the joke works through the process of substitution. Hobbit for habit, with one phoneme, o, replacing another a to make a different word. It's the fact that hobbit is associated with The Lord of the Rings, whereas habit is part of a collocation. Force of habit, that's the basis of the humour. So many jokes rely on this kind of very simple substitution involving minimal pairs like hobbit and habit. Now, that has completely destroyed the joke. Even if you thought the joke was funny in the first place, it is now terribly, terribly unfunny. But it's a really good example of how you analyse a particular pun. So here we've got a whole load of other puns that use phonological manipulation to produce comic effects. I will read through them, and what you need to do is you need to choose one of them which you are going to do an analysis of, as in the bit that I've just read out, using your IPA knowledge, your knowledge about phonology that you've learned so far. The other day, I held the door open for a clown. I thought it was a nice gesture. Be kind to your dentist because he has fillings too. Last night, I kept dreaming I'd written Lord of the Rings. The wife said I'd been talking in my sleep. It's a lengthy article on Japanese sword fighters, but I can summarize it for you. A patient came running to my psychiatry office screaming, I'm a teepee! I'm a wigwam! I told him, relax, you're too tense. Ouch. Okay, choose one of them and construct a paragraph similar to the one that I did about habit and hobbit, using the A-level English language terms that you've learned so far. Next thing, prosodics. Now, prosodics are really, really important elements of phonology. Prosodics means variations in the kind of musical nature of your speech. So we're talking about variations in pitch, whether it's high or whether it's low, intonation and stress, which particular syllables or words that you're stressing, Volume, whether it's loud or soft. Speed, whether it's quickly or whether it's slowly, etc. These are crucial elements in the message. And the point to make if you're presented with a transcript in the exam, or if you're writing about transcripts in your language investigation, is to say that a transcript is a very meagre and poor representation of what's going on with the prosodic features of the human voice. Okay. So have a practice. So I'll give you a sentence and I want you to practice saying it in 5 different ways to communicate different meanings. Let me give you an example. I think she's a hardworking student. I think she's a hardworking student. So what I'm doing is I'm emphasizing there the first person singular pronoun at the beginning of the sentence. It kind of means that I've got this opinion, but there's probably you maybe have a different opinion. So the focus is that, I think differently to somebody else about this matter. That's all done through prosodic features. Stop the video, have a go at doing that. Finally, on prosodics, let me give you a bit of a speaker. This is our principal here at the Queen Elizabeth Sixth Form College. This is Tim Fisher, and this is him doing a bit of a marketing video. So I'm just going to play you the first 15 seconds of Tim introducing himself. And the question is, how do the speaker's phonological features influence the meanings and representations? So what you're trying to do is trying to tune in to the sound of his voice. What is distinctive about it? What are you noticing here about his variations in prosodic features? So is he doing things with stress patterns? What about the speed? Are there variations in volume, pitch, etc.? So what's going on with the prosodic features? And also, you also might want to think about accent as well. So listen to his voice. Where do you think he possibly comes from in the country? And how does the way he speaks perhaps link in to the fact that he is the principal of an educational college? Okay, I'll play this a couple of times for you.
Hi, I'm Tim Fisher and I'm principal here at Queen Elizabeth Sixth Form College, and I'd like to take just a few moments of your time to introduce you to the college and say a few words to encourage you to take part in this year's virtual open event.
And again.
Hi, I'm Tim Fisher and I'm principal here at Queen Elizabeth Sixth Form College, and I'd like to take just a few moments of your time to introduce you to the college and say a few words to encourage you to take part in this year's virtual open event. Now,
okay, that's only 15 minutes of speech, and the point to make is that everybody's speech pattern is completely distinctive. We all have our what's called idiolect. That's our very own special speech pattern. And, it would only take me listening to Tim for 3 seconds to work out that that's him. Okay, so what's going on there? My lights have gone off again. Let me put that back on. Okay, so what's going on there in terms of a variety of prosodic features? So focusing on some particular words, parts of the text where you think there are variations in the prosodic features. And where do you think Tim comes from? Where do you think that he comes from? And how do you think his occupation is actually playing a part in his phonology? Okay, it's a fascinating area to look at. That's it on phonology for now. Next time, I'm going to be talking about pragmatics. I'm looking forward to it already.